Hi there, I'm Annalisa from Parlay, and I just finished running a discussion-based course run entirely on Parlay about this year's US presidential election. It was called America 2024, Constructive Dialogue about the Issues Facing the Nation. I got a group of students together from across America to meet and discuss the biggest issues in this year's US presidential election.
And I definitely think we need a good legal process for them to get in here. We just need to make sure that it's ethical and it's fair to them, and that we still, at the end of the day, we say that they're innocent until we prove that they're guilty.
Talking about big issues in politics, especially during an election cycle, is intense. But it's one of the reasons why the Parlay platform exists, to give students the space to think deeply about these issues and then respectfully engage with different perspectives. I wanted to put this quick video together to tell you a little bit more about the highlights and what I learned from running this type of course on Parlay. I'm going to timestamp the video, so feel free to have a look at the points that are most interesting to you and skip ahead to those. I'll talk about how I set it up, how I integrated student reflections, how I used the Parlay Genie, and then of course my first try of transcribing the verbal roundtable. So you'll get a little glimpse of that as well. If you want to try out any of these discussions in your classes, I'm going to put the link to the collection in the description below so you can have a look, and feel free to ask any questions in the comments as well.
I think it was definitely an improvement on the last debate, but I think that that's not a very high bar is the problem.
Each week, they took part in one written roundtable to research and prepare their thoughts and read perspectives of other people anonymously, and then they would actually talk about them in the verbal roundtable later on in the week. So the questions were meant to be unbiased, and students were encouraged to consider the media bias of any resources that they reviewed. If I'm being honest, I was a little bit nervous about how these discussions would run because I wasn't really sure how heated it would get. So I decided to spend the first week entirely on discussing civic dialogue, why it's important and what it looks like, so that students can really think about the importance of it and how it can easily be lost in a discussion about politics. I was clear about these goals, and I included them in both the written and the verbal roundtable goals for each discussion that we did. We even looked at the 6 pillars of discussion to consider which aspects students felt like they were really strong at and which areas they wanted to improve on in this course.
I personally am good at listening to what you have to say,
but I think I need to improve on being able to change my mind.
But I'm not very good at disagreeing and voicing my disagreements with people.
I kept secret identities on, which is just a fun way to set up the discussion for honest and open conversation. One thing I'd probably improve for next time is I would make sure that students are responding to the comments and giving peer feedback before the verbal discussion. I noticed that some of the students were waiting until after the verbal discussion, but in my opinion, the quality of the dialogue was better when students gave the feedback before, when they were actually well versed with each other's arguments and they were comfortable responding back and forth. It made for better verbal discussion. The second big highlight was using the student reports to have students reflect before, during, and after the discussions. So I would actually pause the verbal discussions, have students open up a new tab, go look at their student report, and then come back to the conversation. They actually made some reflections in real time, and then they set some goals for themselves during the course.
I've noticed that I think I talk more on issues that have more to do with external affairs because I know more about the rest of the world.
I was really inspired when I noticed students saying not only the skills that they wanted to improve on, but how they wanted to get better specifically at disagreeing with other people and listening to other perspectives and really hearing out other sides of an argument, which they felt like they maybe in the past had not been super strong at.
I would say I am pretty good at listening to people, but no matter what they say, I don't think I'm going to change my mind.
I was surprised that the Parlay Genie was very helpful for me during this discussion. Although I came in with a good grasp of these topics, I felt that the Parlay Genie really helped to synthesize these ideas, particularly in the Genie recaps, both in the written and the verbal, but also in the follow-up questions as well. When it came to giving feedback, written feedback in the verbal roundtable, I'd often find myself editing the feedback to be more concise and a little bit more personable and tied directly to maybe one strength and one way to improve on their arguments. I found that the Parlay Genie was giving me really big responses and a lot of different components in those responses, including not only strengths, weaknesses, but questions for follow-up. I just needed to pare that down a bit, but I thought that it was really helpful to just get that first layer of ideas of, which direction to give feedback in for each student. The Genie was actually super helpful when it came to generating the follow-up questions in the verbal roundtable. So it worked out really well, but I always added more questions. I always have a fear that students are going to rip through and we're going to discuss all the questions very quickly. So I'd usually plan for somewhere between 6 to 10 discussion questions. And of course, I'd encourage students to bring their own questions to ask each other as well. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes the groups would fly through those questions. Other times I would spend the whole time on just one or two questions. And those were the really rich discussions where students were ready to just dive into the details. And in many ways, they were facilitating the discussion, and I didn't have to prompt them or encourage them to ask deeper questions. We experienced a few what I call awkward silences, but I told students that they should expect those awkward silences, and those are really important moments for students to jump in or be reminded of another idea that they want to contribute before we wrap up that idea and move on to the next thing. To get the conversation going each time, I also started with a simple icebreaker, so a quick yes or no question, and especially because we were using the audio and the video, because these were remote discussions, I went and made sure that the icebreaker was a good way for students to just quickly tap in, share a quick answer, and then tap out. This confirmed, of course, that their audio and their video is working properly, but it's also a good way to just break the ice, get students familiar with the tap-in system, and have them speak up for the first time. Lastly, I used the transcription feature, which I was super excited about, and I wasn't really sure how it would go, but it was really fun. It was really cool to see and really keep track of the conversation and the little details. What I found really cool was to notice how it was synthesizing the ideas in the discussion. It wasn't just a summary. It was actually blending those ideas and coming up with unique insights that either me as a teacher didn't, word it that way, or students didn't necessarily summarize in that way either. There's a lot more testing to do here, but I think the word cloud is just a really cool way to actually summarize the conversation and pull out those important themes. Overall, I was super impressed with the quality of the discussion with these students. It was inspiring and really gave me hope for this new generation of students that really want to learn more and want to understand and hear other students out, especially around really complex issues.
I just enjoyed learning more about the opposing side, like that, from what I want.
If you want to try out any of these discussions, I've posted the collection in the Parlay universe and I've linked it in the description below. So have a look and feel free to use any of them with your class. If you want to chat any more about what I learned in this course, feel free to reach out. I'd love to tell you more about it and talk through what discussions around some of these big and complex issues can look like. I'm going to leave you with a few of my favorite snippets from these discussions.
Not red versus blue, just your ideas going against each other ever in political parties.
I think that an important thing is to make sure that you know that you're not going to change everyone's mind. So even though you feel one way, doesn't mean that other people are going to necessarily agree with you or ever will agree with you. We've all been raised in different ways, so we're all going to have different opinions that aren't going to be easily persuaded.
Remain truthful. If you start spreading lies, then that just gets more and more disrespectful.
Thinking about some of these pillars and thinking about that debate, how would we rank that out of 10? Was it like a 10 out of 10, super great, we hope everybody talks like this forever? Or do you think it could be better?
I think it was definitely an improvement on the last debate. But I think that that's not a very high bar is the problem. So I'd give it like a 5 out of 10. I think it could definitely be a lot better.
Compared to previous debates, it was still somewhat like unprofessional.
Neither of them seemed to be very respectful, and they would listen to like half of what the other person said and then just only go off of that.
I think Kamala did a better job than Biden did in terms of listening.
How could they improve? Or what did they do well on?
I think both sides maybe at some points would shut each other down too quickly and shut the ideas down instead of hearing them out a bit better. and I think that if it was a bit better in terms of communication and listening, it could have made the whole entire debate better.
I think Trump was pretty respectful to Harris, but I don't think he was super respectful to the hosts. I think he interrupted them a lot. Yeah, I agree with that. I think he felt a really big rush to defend himself, and so he would be he would just shush the interviewers, and they both talked over each other sometimes. So in terms of that, there was definitely tension. That's what I picked up on, and it made it more entertaining, but there was both parts where I was like, oh, they shouldn't have said that,
Everybody's bad, then we have to go through the process. If we assume, okay, everybody's good, then nobody has to go through the process. Even bad people are going to get in. It's not assuming that everybody's bad that's making it a good idea to have a strict process. And my question is, so you were saying earlier that it's like when prisoners get out, they can just start doing crime scan. So approximately 82% of prisoners get rearrested within 10 years of their release.
Legal immigrants, it's a 0.4% chance that they go to jail for a serious crime. Now, the process, as we know, is very complicated, so maybe it's because of that, so maybe it's doing a good job at keeping them out.
I just want to build on what Brandon said about it. It's kind of like in court, like you're guilty until proven not guilty, or you're not guilty until proven guilty, or we have to assume everybody's bad until proven they're not. You know what I'm saying? So bad people will get through somehow, and then they're through, and then that's it. Or did I say something wrong? I see Brandon. All right. I'm gonna stop talking. I'm sorry.
It's actually you're innocent until proven guilty. You have to at some point trust people, not because oh, everyone's probably a good person. No, I'm saying because we have to just assume that they're innocent until they're proven guilty. And so I definitely don't want crime to go up or whatever. I definitely don't want us to have I respect them for sure, and I definitely think we need a good legal process for them to get in here. We just need to make sure that it's ethical and it's fair to them, and that we still, at the end of the day, we say that they're innocent until we prove that they're guilty, prove that they're not good people, not worthy American citizens.
I understand where you come from, but I think the main reason that we're talking about China is because they are our number one source of imported goods. So, I mean,
yeah, it is actually entirely true that pretty much at least 90% of American goods for wartime are made in the United States. It's already, as well as a lot of the goods that other countries use for to keep their militaries running are also built in American companies and American factories, not their own. America is mainly producing the most guns, tanks, aircraft, especially, and ships per tonnage at least than any other country in the world at the moment.
I just want to say that, maybe not majority, but certain things that China does use is microchips.
we've actually, in the past years, we've actually started moving down in the amount of stuff that we're getting from China for military.
What I found most interesting was that I never thought of healthcare being a human right or being a privilege, but now that I thought of it, I thought that was better being a human right, so that way everyone would be able to not have to find different places to go to healthcare because it's too expensive.
I think it's been really interesting having people like Loretto in the class that aren't from America. You guys bring an outside look on our government and stuff into it that I think has been really helpful.
I just enjoyed learning more about the opposing side from what I want, because I enjoyed learning things that I didn't know about the other side.
I've really enjoyed this course. It's been kind of fun because it's given me new ideas to discuss with other people.
I found it very nice to be able to just talk about the issue, and I like being able to talk about stuff like this.